Eskom CEO André says the rolling blackouts will be eased by the end of this coming week. De Ruyter was part of a team that accompanied President Cyril Ramaphosa on an oversight visit to the Tutuka Power Station in Mpumalanga. Tutuka is one of 15 power stations that Eskom owns. Ramaphosa was flanked by the Ministers of Mineral Resources and Energy, Public Enterprises, Police and the Premier of Mpumalanga during that visit.
André De Ruyter says improved generation capacity is expected to mitigate the power cuts by the end of the coming week. The country has been languishing in darkness for nearly 3 weeks, inconveniencing households and threatening the survival of businesses. De Ruyter says with more units coming back on stream, the situation will improve.
Towards the end of the coming week, we should emerge from load shedding. We have already lifted our indication for load shedding going forward. We've got a couple of big units returning, so that's positive news. Towards the end of July, the risk will be significantly diminished once Koeberg 2 comes back to the grid. That's about 920 megawatts, so that will bring a large measure of relief. But ultimately, to put load shedding to bed, what we need is additional capacity, because the system as it is at the moment is still unreliable and unpredictable, and we need to give colleagues like Silo Momecha, the power station manager at Tutuka here, the headroom to carry out much needed maintenance in order to make sure that Tutuka Power Station runs like the oiled machine it should.
Ramaphosa has conducted an oversight visit at the Tutuka Power Station, which has a generating capacity of 3,510 megawatts. He was shown around the plant, including its operations, and informed about the difficulties it faces. The plant is currently being degraded due to insufficient maintenance. Among other challenges are also fraud and corruption.
We're pleased that people are being arrested, and those who are involved in acts of corruption are now being arrested. And our law enforcement agencies have started work, and they are going to continue, and that is going to intensify because corruption and fraud and indeed state capture have diverted our intentions to bring about progress in our country. So we are going to be paying close attention to issues of corruption and fraud. Unfortunately, here, as we speak, already the word is out that, yes, we're focusing on going after those who are corrupt and who are fraudulent as well.
The president said efforts to curb corruption at the power utility was going to be intensified. Ramaphosa also said a move to establish another state-owned company to compete with Eskom would not be actioned now.
No, the issue that was raised by Minister Mantashe is a matter that will be given consideration, and it's a matter that is not going to be actioned now. What we now need to do is to reposition Eskom and make sure that we generate enough energy for the country. So that is our main focus. Other matters will be looked at in time. An address to the nation, it's something that we are giving consideration to, in terms of looking at the various issues that need to be addressed. So in time, that will be the case.
The president is still expected to make a major announcement regarding further measures to end rolling blackouts in the country. Diabo Sito, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Clyde Mallinson is an independent energy analyst. He joins us now to talk about the visit. A very good evening to you, Clyde. Always good to chat to you. Let's just start with the promise being made by Eskom's CEO, saying that we're going to see light at the end of the dark tunnel by the end of the week. If you ask me, by my calculation, end of the week, depending whether your week starts on a Sunday or a Monday, the end of the week is nigh. And are you confident that he'll be able to keep to this promise?
Yeah, I think I thought by this stage people would have learned that it's not wise to make predictions about ongoing or future load shedding. So I think the indication was that the situation will improve, but I don't think there was mention made that it'll actually end. So when you've been hovering around stage 6 or stage 4, it's a dramatic improvement to revert to stage 2. But stage 2 is not really acceptable. So I don't think we're going to see an end to load shedding soon, unfortunately.
And I want to talk about the strategic importance of Tutuka. We've mentioned the fact that it's been performing badly. It's one of 15 power stations owned by Eskom. Do you have any insight at all as to why this is?
Well, first of all, I think it was a very brave thing to do. It's so easy to go to the best performing coal station. And I think recently Eskom took journalists to Letabo, I think it was, which is one of the top performing power stations. And then everything's pretty impressive and humming quite nicely. So I think they were quite brave to go into the belly of the beast, if I could call it that. So Eskom have 3 particularly poorly performing coal-fired power stations, Tutuka, Duva and Kendal. They were built started in the 70s, some of them were started in the 80s, and the last one I think was finished off in the early 90s. And they all are so-called 6-pack power stations. They have 6 units, and they all produce around about 3,600 or so megawatts. I think one of them is about 4,000 and one might be 3,200 or something. But on average, Tutuka, over the last quite a long period, has only been running on, let's call it, 2 cylinders out of the 6. So on average, it's only been available for 30% of the time. And just because it's available doesn't actually mean it was used fully during that 30% of the time. So it's been a real problematic power station. And I, to a certain extent, take my hat off for them going to that very power station and trying to make a difference there. But I'm not sure that it's a case of catch-up maintenance now. I think it's been fed the wrong food. Its internal organs are damaged. Its cooling systems are suspect. A lot of damage has been done at Tutuka that goes beyond what I would call standard maintenance. And I'm not convinced that they will be able to ever bring it back to... It's almost like a problem child that hasn't been educated properly in its early years, and you've now got a recalcitrant teenager, if you like. And if anyone knows what I'm talking about, it's not that easy to correct those earlier wrongs.
So, Clyde, what kind of diet should Tutuka be on, and who or what should be the chef that's preparing the meal?
Well, interestingly enough, coal-fired power stations need their coal to be finely ground. It's almost like baby food. So the coal gets ground up and then injected into the boilers almost in a spray. So if you have, you generally design these coal-fired boilers for a specific quality of coal. So they're almost like fussy cats. If you give them a different kind of cat food, they just turn their noses up, or they do worse on your carpet. So the food that's been given to Tutuka in many cases has not been the correct food. It hasn't been ground to the right consistency. And because there's been so much graft and corruption associated with Tutuka, some of that may be intentional, to feed it the wrong food. And then if it's not getting fed properly, you have to inject oil into the boiler to make up for the low quality food. And of course, if you've got a scheme going on nicking some of that oil into trucks parked in mealie fields somewhere close to the power station in the middle of the night, then it's in your interest to make sure that the power station gets poor food, has to supplement the food with vitamins, and you then get yourself in between the vitamin supplier and the vitamin user, and you start selling vitamins to someone else. So in a sense, that's what's happened. So not only has the poor food damaged the internal organs of Tutuka, but it's allowed people to develop quite sophisticated fraud schemes related to Tutuka.
Clyde, just 2 things, because we are running out of time, and I'd like to hear your point of view on this. So, André, Ruyter, pinning his hopes on the return of Kuberg, and the issue of introducing into the space a new state-owned entity to reduce the monopoly of Eskom. The question is, why would you do that if Eskom itself is not performing as it should be? So shouldn't you get your house in order before you start thinking of introducing a new child onto the scene? And Koeberg itself has been problematic. So, as you said, we need to be very circumspect about believing the story that, or this placation that we're getting, that things are looking right. Share your thoughts with me about Koeberg and also introducing another state-owned entity. To what end?
Okay, so with Koeberg, I'm on record of saying that I think it was a mistake to do the life extension. I think Koeberg should have been run to the end of its useful life and then shut down, because we've seen now that during this very, very difficult period, we've been running without one unit at Koeberg for the last 6 months or so. And it's been a very heavy burden to bear for the economy. So with one unit of Koeberg down, that's one stage of load shedding. But I don't want to go into too much detail there. It'll be fantastic when they bring that unit back on. But I personally would recommend that they don't replace those steam generators and that they close Koeberg when it was meant to be closed. With regard to a second Eskom, it's actually something that, strangely enough, I thought might be quite a good idea, but my second Eskom would have been a green Eskom, not a baseload coal, nuclear and oil and gas Eskom. And the idea would be to allow the workers at the existing coal plants to transition from those plants into renewable plants that were basically taking over the generation duty of those old coal plants. So it would be a managed transfer of Eskom staff from the coal-fired power industry into the renewable industry, with a lot of it happening in Mpumalanga. And we've seen signs of that happening. So I think that could have been useful. But the thought of Eskom trying to start a second Eskom which focuses on the mythical baseload and reverts to last century technologies will be an out-and-out disaster.
Clyde, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Independent energy analyst Clyde Mallinson. And as you know, President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to make an announcement or have an address on the energy situation. He does say we're in crisis. Part of the plan government has is to expedite the procurement of public